Where that within the Common Weal there isn't anything that relates to disability issues. And so today was about stimulating interest and involvement, or is about stimulating interest and involvement on disability issues in relation to the Common Weal. Robin's going to talk for a wee while on, I suppose you could talk for lots of time, but you're going to talk for a wee while on the Common Weal and hopefully encourage knowledge and activity in disability issues. Thanks very much, Rob.
Okay, well I'll talk.
I think we'll close the door and get rid of the pipe-free music. Pretty sure it distracts us.
That the cartoons have been great so far. I've very much enjoyed. What I'll do is I'll just talk here, and I won't. Since we've got plenty of time, I won't. Well, I'll keep an eye on that. I won't time myself too much. I come to these things and I say I'll talk for 15 minutes, it never is. So I'm not going to say I'm going to talk for 15 minutes. I'll talk for a while. If there's anything in particular that I'm interrupting as I go along, but I will stop and hopefully get a decent blather at the end of it. So, let's just kick off with the basic idea of why we had Common Weal, why we came up with it and what it's about. From the perspective of politics in Britain, we've had a politics which is dominated by one political philosophy. Now, this political philosophy is predicated on the belief that conflict gives you the best outcomes in society. If we put two people in a room, whoever comes out alive must be the best. And that concept follows through in everything. So for example, I mean, we're not even familiar with the extent of it anymore. In education, we talk about meritocracy. If you are better than the other kid, then you should win. No matter what social background you come from, and that passes for socially progressive. Well, I don't think that's necessarily the highest ideal we can achieve for society. Whoever happens to be the strongest can win it. It applies to almost all economics nowadays. We will use planning, we will use all of the economic levers to support whoever is the most powerful, which tends to mean the biggest, the ones with the most corporate power, the ones who have the most ability to shape things to their own ends. It works right across the whole of the government and the political agenda, and it has been dominant since more or less 1979. It really has been the dominant political belief in our country. And it's got a phrase that you can usefully use to get it focused in your head, and that phrase is the one that you will have heard many times: cherish the wealth creators, for they are better than you. And this is the underlying belief of neoliberal British economics, that there are certain people who are better than the rest of us. We know this because they have money, and money is the indicator of betterness. Money is the universal measure of who has succeeded, and those who succeed must have succeeded for reasons of sheer merit. Therefore, whoever wins, whoever has the most money, they must be the best people. So all we have to do is allow the people with the most money to guide society, and we have, de facto, put the best people in charge. That's roughly how we're running things just now. Let's compare and contrast with the Nordic countries. The Nordic countries operate quite differently. In the height of the economic crisis, or as they called it in Norway, 2009, they had no crisis. The Prime Minister of Norway said, as a way of moving forward, to build more, we must share more. Now let's think about the difference here, what that philosophy says. It's a philosophy that says that the best way to get things done is to ensure that resources are reasonably evenly shared across people, so that people have a fighting chance of building. And the most people have a chance of building because they have some access to resource, the more that will build. If this is in any way not immediately obvious to you, then just think about a nursery school. If you were to say in a nursery school that the aim is to encourage the biggest child to get the most Lego in his sweaty little paws and hoard the Lego, what gets built? Nothing gets built. All the other kids get shoved aside. The big kid hoards the Lego, and once he's got the Lego, hoarding it, having that Lego is the purpose. That's the aim. That's what the whole purpose has been about. if you stop the biggest child from bullying the other kids and stealing all the Lego, and you let the Lego be distributed more evenly across the nursery, things get built. Now that's a very simple analogy for understanding the difference between the economics of neoliberal Britain and the economics of a potential Common Weal Scotland. It's the idea that if you share resource and you spread the capacity to build and to create and to make and to do and to live and to get involved and to experience, if you can spread it more evenly, the sum total of everything that is built is bigger. Is this true? Is this just lefty stuff that McAlpine goes around meetings telling folk? It's not. I mean, go and have a look at any statistic that you'd like to. Now, I don't know if anyone here is an economist. To be quite honest, in modern Britain, we have lost any sense of what economics really is. So, for example, what's a measure of everything's going brilliant in the economy? Very simply, we've been running Britain as one giant game of conflict for 40 years. A game of conflict in which public policy favours anyone that wins. Anyone who wins by whatever means, whoever happens to be the strongest, public policy favours them. Whether it's meritocracy in schools, whether it's how the economy operates, whether it's how we allocate space in city centres, whether it's how we have a political attitude to welfare and benefits, the strongest are the ones that we favour, because in a sort of Darwinian natural selection, if we favour the strongest society as a whole will do best. Which I'm trying to compare with, for example, a Nordic model, in which they accept that the totality of what you can build and create as a society is related much more closely to how you distribute resources across a society. So if you can have more people with the capacity of actually using wealth to do something with it, to build with it, the aggregate total of what you build, the aggregate sum of what a society creates becomes more. Now, I just got to the point of saying it might sound rather nice to say that you can have both the best possible economic performance and the best possible social outcomes in one economic system. So you share more evenly, you have people who are happier and wealthier and more equal, and the outcome of that is you get a better economy. Now that sounds possibly too good to be true, so let's go and have a quick check and see if it is too good to be true. Who's at the top of the World Competitiveness League tables? Now, World Competitiveness League tables are not produced by lefties like me. These are produced by things like the World Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund, OECD, international business schools. These are conflict lovers. So they produce these tables identifying which economies in the world are the strongest. And at the top of the table, it's largely Nordic countries, small countries of 5 to 10 million, with high levels of innovation, high levels of real industrial output. They're up there, they're right up at the top. Look at who's got the strongest innovation, and the volume of innovation that you get in Britain compared to the Nordic countries. The Nordic countries outstrip us by a factor of 3-4. In fact, I'm just doing this from memory, the 6% of GDP in 6% of GDP in Sweden goes into innovation. And research and development and creating new ideas. In Britain, it's about 1.2%. In Scotland, it's about 0.6%, because innovation is not what you do if you want to make fast money. What you do if you want to make fast money is market. So take your iPhone 5, put a fingerprint reader on it, call it an iPhone 5S, and con everyone out the same money again. This is not innovation, that's marketing. So, this is the basic idea behind which we were trying to develop the concept of Common Weal. The idea of looking at a model, a fundamental model of social and economic development, which isn't the one that we've had, isn't the one that's delivered what we've got. Now, it's worth thinking what we've got. And this is another big problem we've got in Britain. We are the most myopic and parochial country. We have a frame of reference that stretches from about London to about Washington, and that's about it. And in between these two places is, of course, nothing. So we have this tiny frame of reference for what success looks like. Now let's have a quick talk about what success actually looks like. I was just about to say before. Success in Britain is taken to be, we have an economic recovery happening now because house prices are rising, retail sales are increasing, and that's it. Now, I'm not an economist. I've had to pick up a lot over the years. Didn't do economics at university, but even I kind of scratch my head saying, what happened to things like balance of trade? What happened to things like productivity? But these not taken to be fairly important standard measures of the economic vitality of a country. And the reason we don't talk about them is because go and have a look at them, they're dreadful. Britain's productivity is really poor. We are the only country, along with France, of the developed countries who between 1980 and today saw an aggregate drop in industrial production. Everybody else, Italy, Spain, by far the best, the Germanys, the Norways, the Swedens, they were seeing rates of increase at 50%, 80%, 100% increase in industrial production. And we are seeing, if I remember it, it's about 15% decrease in industrial production over that period. So we don't make stuff. We don't manufacture stuff or sell stuff. So what do? We have a carousel economy, a debt economy, which runs off the basis of, in effect, farming the population. Now this takes a little bit to get your head around this, so I will kind of do it fairly gently here. Economics of retail. How does it work? Where does the value come? Where does the profit come from retail? How does it help our society? Because you've been told that all these large volumes of retail create jobs. How do they create jobs? Let's just cut away the rhetoric that we've got. How do these places create jobs? Well, first of all, they create jobs by taking value, but not from this country. The value in retail is created largely by poor Chinese girls stitching push-up bras. That's largely where the value is added. They take thread and make cloth. They take cloth and make goods. They take goods and put them in a box and they send them to us. So the value was created there at poverty wages. Then we bring it here, where the value is realised. It's important this is not created but realised. The value is realised here. And it is realised through a process and a system which involves, first of all, ordinary workers distributing the stuff to the shops. And then ordinary workers, who have also happened to build these retail units, sell it to the public at a highly marked up cost. That is how they realise their profit from you, from us. A retail economy makes all of its profit from our pocket. Now stop and think about that for a second. If this is supposed to be making us richer, how is it that all of their profit comes from our pockets, a little bit of it comes back to us in low-paid jobs, and this is supposed to be making us richer? It doesn't make any sense when you think about it. So let's just see if it tallies up. Because where's the second biggest retail centre outside London in Britain? Hey, Glasgow. Hooray! We're so proud. Where's the highest incidence of poverty in Britain? Oh, it's in Glasgow. That's not so good. If retail cures poverty by creating jobs, why doesn't it? Why doesn't it in practice do it? Because if you take 2 seconds to take it apart, you'll discover it doesn't. Take another example of why Britain's kind of useless for people. And this is all about us. This is all about people. Another reason Britain's useless for people is because of the debt economy. Now, again, I'm not going to go into a lot of economics here, but people think the debt economy means that they increase the capacity to fleece money out of us, to realise more value out of us by putting us into debt. That's not technically what a debt economy is at all. That's part of it. That's something that also happens. But a debt economy is something slightly different. A debt economy is a place where you manage the money supply, which is to say the interest that you pay when you borrow money. You manage it so that the cost of borrowing money is so low that almost anything you do with that money is worth more than the borrowed cost. So if you're borrowing money so cheaply, I mean, money is phenomenally cheap in Britain, it has been for years. You can borrow as an industry, not for you, not for punters, but if you're doing commercial bank borrowing, you can borrow very, very large sums of money at interest that's so cheap that all you have to do is the fastest return stuff, not the best return stuff, not the most productive return stuff, but the fastest return stuff. And you'll be familiar with some of this. Tom Hunter, one of our leading heroes. This is a man who has been an outstanding contributor to our economy by borrowing money from the Bank of Scotland, buying up existing successful businesses, tearing them apart, taking the value out of them and selling them on at a profit with fewer jobs. Oh, wait a minute, that doesn't sound so good, because it's not. This is a debt economy. You don't have to do anything to add serious value. If you're borrowing at 0.5%, you only need to make 1%. And if you do it over and over and over and over again, that's better than actually having to work for a living. But that's more or less how the UK economy is organised and structured. We can actually borrow money. If you want to make money in Britain, you can more or less borrow at our crazy low interest rates, drive over to France and give it to people at slightly higher interest rates. And this is the problem. We are a low margin economy. We don't create large volumes of value in the work that we do. What we do is we create tiny amounts of value over and over again. Fast. Sell, 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 more retail, expand it, create another iPhone, create another whatever. Perpetually restructuring things, perpetually changing the high street, building, rebuilding, doing the same thing over again. Nothing's designed for the long term, nothing really lasts. And then we wonder why it is that we've got no real economy. Now there's another very important element of this, and there's another aspect why it should concern us very greatly, and that is because that model of creating wealth creates wealth for a very few, but the very definition of that kind of debt-run economy is that you don't want to be paying people. This is a low margin, low productivity, low pay mode of developing the economy. We have the lowest, there's a whole bunch of things I'm going to say here, it's going to take 2 seconds. We are the lowest paid economy of the advanced world, with, apart from the US, the lowest volume, lowest level of holidays and the longest hours worked in the developed world. So, we have a chronically low pay economy, with chronically poor productivity. One of the reasons why the UK is so desperate not to lose Scotland in the independence referendum is if you take away North Sea oil and you go back and you look at the UK's balance of payments, it's terrible because we don't export anything. We import like crazy, but we don't export. You start to have these balance of trade where it suddenly says, wait a minute, Britain doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. It just buys stuff and sells stuff. It's like one big Arthur Daly. That causes people to be nervous, and the UK establishment knows that. Losing North Sea oil exports just for balance of trade, never mind the revenues from North Sea oil, matters to the UK economy, because someday someone's going to wake up and say, hold on, our innovation rates are dreadful, our productivity rates are really poor, our pay is really awful, and our exports are really bad. Is there something wrong here? There's distinctly and definitely something wrong here. So, that's a bit more economics than I usually kick off with, but I wanted to do that for a very specific purpose here, because I wanted to talk about the fundamental problems behind the other things that we've got going on, the other difficulties that we've got in society. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because this is partly disability, was the question of welfare. Now, the welfare question is one that has been coming up again and again. Now, there's 2 things I want to say about welfare, and this is something that you'll not be unfamiliar with. The first thing I want to say about welfare is that it is all an economic problem. It's not a social problem. It's got nothing to do with society, it's got nothing to do with the people who are on benefits, it's got nothing to do with the overall structure of the fabric of our communities, it's the economy. We have, I'm going to say it again, the lowest paid economy in the developed world. You can measure it differently, certainly one of the very lowest paid economies in the developed world. So let me give you a number. Let's say that the kind of person who contributes positively to the public finances in Britain earns between, say, 25,000, 35,000, sound about reasonable. They are paying their taxes, they are shopping, they are buying things, they are contributing to the economy, they're not drawing benefits heavily. So 25 to 35,000 pounds, that's the kind of virtuous zone. They're not tax dodging, they don't have tax accountants at that, they're failing to pay the tax. Only 1 in 5 Scots in work in Britain, people in Britain, Scots, the number in Britain is more or less the same, but only 1 in 5 working Scots earns between 25 and 35,000 pounds. 3 out of 5 Scots in work earn under 24,000 pounds. And the Scottish median salary, the salary under which half of all working Scots, and that's working Scots, half of all working Scots earn under £21,000. I'm going to give you another statistic, and this one I don't believe, and it's true. I saw it, I looked at it 5 times, and said, that's got to be wrong, and I went away and I came back and it's true. So it's a little bit more mathsy stuff for you, but you're all familiar with the idea of percentile. If you start from the very bottom of society and you work your way up to the 80th percentile, so only 20% of the whole population are above you. At the 80th percentile of income, the average Scot takes about 15% of their total income in benefits. Now that, at the 80th, I know, it's all you have to do, at the 80th percentile, you're earning about £35,000. And at £35,000, if your partner doesn't work and you have a child, and your child benefit comes in, you're getting about 15% of your income from benefits. We have a benefits culture that reaches up to the 80th percentile, because we have a massively low pay economy. Massively low pay economy. So when people keep saying, oh, we've got a better welfare problem, we don't. We've got a low pay problem. We don't have a benefits problem, we've got a low pay problem. We don't have a public finances problem, we've got a low pay problem. To try and demonstrate this, we produced a report which thank God for the Sunday Herald, they got a decent pre-announcement in that, but we got nothing. We issued it last week, and for the first time in my working life, and I've worked with media for 20 years now, for the first time I can remember in my working life, the Herald, who's no friend at the moment, the Herald printed four paragraphs on this of rebuttal from the Scottish Whisky Association, which we said in our reports could afford to pay some more tax. We'll come back in a second if you're interested. And in 4 paragraphs, the Scottish Whisky Association rebutted our report without the paper actually mentioning the report. Nah, I've never heard of such a thing before, but there you go. So go and have a look on the website. We just did a very straightforward calculation. If you took Scotland's workforce and you had the sort of rates of employment, low levels of unemployment you've got in a Nordic country, and you had something like the income distribution of a Nordic country. So you got rid of all the low pay and you moved them into decent pay. No, we're not talking super high pay, we're just talking decent pay. If you do that, that alone, without touching income tax rates, will raise income tax take in in Scotland by £4 billion. Just by doing nothing other than fixing the economy. £4 billion. Now, £4 billion covers everything you've heard about financial problems in the UK economy. There was much gnashing of teeth because they thought, well, if oil goes badly, we could be $3 billion in deficit. We can fix that easily. That can be done. We've just got to fix this mess of an economy that we've got. And once you do that, the drain on the public finances that comes from paying for the failures of our economy through benefits and welfare is enormous. It's extremely expensive. If we had a reasonable pay economy, it's not just that you make $4 billion in tax, you probably save $3 or $4 billion on unnecessary expenditure on low pay. Because, and this is one of the most iniquitous things I find about the whole welfare debate, is that welfare has just been, well, we'll come on to I said I was going to say 2 things about welfare, and we'll come on to the second, but we've kind of tagged welfare as a problem for those on welfare. And I'm trying to argue it's not, but it's even worse than that, because what a lot of the problem that we're talking about when we're talking about the welfare problem is in-work welfare, in-work poverty, which doesn't get properly discussed. Now, why have we got in-work poverty? What does that mean? Think about the meaning of economics again, just briefly. The market's supposed to pay the rate, and if you're a person and you work 40 hours a week and you can't afford to survive, the market's supposed to not work. You're supposed to not be able to pay a wage below what somebody can live on, what somebody can survive on. So how do we allow people to pay below subsistence wages in Britain? It's called Gordon Brown's Working Family Tax Credits. Working family tax credits are not a credit paid through the tax to working families. Working family tax credits are a subsidy to low-pay employers which let them pay starvation wages, and then the government picks up the tab. You shouldn't have working family tax credits. You should have a living wage. You should have a high wage economy. Now, once you start to see welfare and all that areas of social security in those lights, it looks quite different. But there's another thing, there's another important part of the welfare debate, which is the proper use of the word populism. Now, you'll all have heard people referring to, abolishing tuition fees and prescription charges, that's just populism. Nope, that's just popular. That would be democracy. sorry to disappoint you, Daily Telegraph, but we all, and I mean all, from doctors on £80,000 down to the unemployed, we all want universal public services. We don't want to pay for medicine. We don't believe anyone should be paying for education. That would be a democratic consensus. That's not populism. Populism means something completely different. And this is where I'm bringing it around to you folks, because you are largely on the other side of it. Populism, the root of the word populism, and almost nobody in British politics knows this, and I find this very strange, it's just poor knowledge. The root of the word populism is not popular, but populace, the population. The theory of populism is that to control a society, to manage a society, the best way to go about it is to divide it into two bits. A big bit and a small bit, and turn the big bit against the small bit. So standard, make the big bit hate the small bit, and it's easier to manage the big bit. This is the meaning of populism. The populism occurs at very specific times. Populism occurs when people want to have revolutions, or when people want to distract you from their own catastrophes. So the biggest burst of populism in Britain, post the race hate stuff of the 1960s, was Thatcher. Thatcher wanted to create a different kind of Britain, so she set one part of Britain against the other part of Britain, and she used that to push through a neoliberal revolution. But we've seen it again, because the real time when populism is absolutely undeniable, oh, you always get populism, is when the elite, when the establishment screw up. When the establishment screws up, and everyone says, hold on a minute, you were supposed to be the brightest and the best. You were supposed to be the shining leaders who were never wrong. And it turns out that you're incompetent nincompoops. You couldn't run a bath. Hold on, we've got some questions about things now. Hold on, look at those poor people over there, they're scroungers. Go and hate them. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The Nazis did it with the Jews. Mugabe did it with a whole bunch of different people. It's a standard process that the establishment and elite uses when they want to get you distracted away from the fact that they're rubbish. The next thing you know, you end up with television programmes, and I've not seen it. I've seen it in the iPlayer. There's no way I'm watching it, but they've actually got a programme in Britain called I Love My Country. I don't know if it's on it, but I've seen the looks of it, and I don't like the looks of it. Can you imagine in Scotland, if BBC Scotland had commissioned a programme, I Love My Scotland? People's heads would be popping off in apoplexy. Or the Great British Bake Off, or the Great British Spring, or the Great British Greatness, or Science Britannica. I just flip through the BBC, and it's like, wow, you people really love yourself. I mean, we have been fed Britain through the years just now. Nationalism and splitting people up is what happens when things go wrong. Now, why am I telling you this? Because for those of you who are disabled, you're not in the big group. You're not in the successful, striving, working families. Successful, striving, working families who are all in poverty. You're the other lot. You're the broken people. Now, this is the other key thing that I was trying to explain when I was going on about conflict. The point about conflict is it's supposed to be this conflict theory of how we run the world, how we run society, is predicated on a sort of natural selection of identifying the broken people. And the broken people have to be put in a bag. Once we've dealt with the super striding wealth creators, if we've got some time at the end, we'll just open up the broken bag. I'll have a look in the broken bag and see the broken people and work out which one of them deserve to be squashed and which one of them deserve pity. Now that is the model that we have come into in Britain just now, which is to identify people according to their utility. Your utility is the key. Are you of any use to us? And the problem is, the truth is that for most people, you're not of all that much use, other than the extent to which you will answer with a nod to the content to stack shelves for low pay. That's the spirit. That is the much utility as most people in Britain have to our economic system. And if for any reason you're not able to stack a shelf for the salary that you're willing to be paid, suddenly your utility is gone. And this idea of broken people is inherently wrong. It's inherently wrong. Because the truth is that the capacity to create and build and do and change and manage is not something which is done only by the unbroken person. The theory of the theory of the great person. Roosevelt was in a wheelchair. He wasn't all that broken. There's plenty. I mean, nowadays in the modern world, as I keep pointing out, people who say, oh, you know, we need fit young people for engineering. Really? Modern engineering, which is almost all computer-aided design in front of a computer, fit young people for engineering? Are you possibly wrong? So this idea that we have these two classes of people, the striving and the broken, is a plague on our society. Because to be quite honest, I haven't got a university degree now. Doing reasonably well, but if I suspect if they came along and looked at my bank balance and they looked at my general success in enriching myself since the foundation was set up 2 years ago, they'd probably conclude I was pretty broken too. I'm not on the right side for them. I am not going to summer holiday. I'm not going one summer holiday this year. I'm not their kind of person, because the kind of person they're looking for is broken in another way. And this is the sad thing. This is the thing that upsets me most. And you've probably heard this little story before, but I'm going to tell you again. Just in case you haven't. 2 kids up in the morning. One of the kids goes to school. On his way to school, he vandalises the bus stop. Once he gets to school, he beats up another kid and he gets taken to remedial. He smokes at lunchtime, gets into another fight, gets excluded. In the afternoon, he takes some of his money out of his mum's purse, goes down to an arcade and gambles for a while, manages to sneak some beer, does that, goes away home, smashes something else, and gets to his bed. Another kid gets up in the morning, pops into the library on the way to pick up his book back, gets into school, works really hard, has good fun, goes to the youth club at night, gets good school results, goes to the youth club at night where he plays snooker with his friends, and you know, he joins the Amateur Dramatic Society. He goes back home, reads his book and goes to bed. Child A is economic goldmine. Child B is an economic disaster. Child A causes a whole bunch of workmen to go and fix a bus shelter. Requires 2 or 3 remedial social workers, all of whom have to be funded through the public purse to keep a hold of them. He's buying cigarettes and alcohol, which not only keeps his local newsagents busy, but of course it's great for the global alcohol trade and the global cigarette trade because he's hooked for life. He's breaking he's putting money, and it's not his money, it doesn't matter, he's putting money in a pugging machine, so he's handing more into the economy, and he breaks something else to be home, they'll have to fix that too. Hooray! He is a paragon of economic development in Britain. The other kid, waste of time. He only had the book for a week. There's only a tiny proportion of the purchase price of the book. If he'd only bought the book, or even if he just bought the book, it would have been fine. He went to a nightclub at night, and damn it, snooker was free. He wasn't in a pub putting money in the snooker machine. This is the problem we've got. We have a whole system which is designed to farm us. I'm going to mention that earlier on and probably didn't explain it. We are only useful as far as they can farm us. If they can make us work hard for as little pay as they can get away with and still take all of that money back off us again, and drive us into living the life that suits them, of spending and of engaging with society in such a way that's all about commercial interaction, then that's good for them. Now, I'm going to give an example that I use a lot, which is the death of the Frisbee. Frisbees were good fun, I remember. I seem to remember Frisbees back when they existed. It's been quite a fun way to spend some time on the beach. What's the real problem with the Frisbee? Why is Frisbee such a disaster? What's the catastrophe with the Frisbee? Because you've got years of fun and it costs about £1.99. And, I mean, this is just the thing that people have got to get their head around. Why would anybody be so daft as to advertise a Frisbee? You don't get adverts on the telly about Frisbees. Why? Because there's no profit in it. In fact, it's the opposite. It would make us fit and happy and not cost us any money. We cannot be having that. So, we have this problem in which we are farmed, we're encouraged to do certain things that are supposed to be good for us. And if you sit down, you really run through in your head, is this good for us? It's an exercise that I encourage people to take a shot at. I do it for fun. Sit down in front of a telly at night. I now download and use iPlayer. I cannot abide adverts, they're just so bad in so many ways. But sit through some advert breaks and don't think too much and write down what you are supposed to be taking from those adverts as they go through. Do it for a couple of hours, watch telly for a bit in the evening, write them down. I'll look back what you've got afterwards and it will read like this. Your hair's shit, your girlfriend's ugly, your house is crap, Your cart is old and pathetic. You do not go enough summer holidays. They're all laughing at you. People think this is surprising. Then they need to go and read the theory. There's a guy in the 1920s who invented advertising, and he greatly regretted it. And he used the phrase, the manufacture of desire. If we leave people to pursue what they actually desire, they don't spend enough money. We must make them desire things which take their money away from us. Again, this process of farming us for their purpose. Because it's partly the joyful poverty of running a left-wing think tank, but I used to have a very good salary and now I really don't. And I am so much happier. I don't spend my days thinking about what I might spend anymore, because I don't have any money. And instead we live in the woods with chickens. And I've got to say, I do have a limit to omelettes, but nevertheless, we live in the woods, we get chickens, we live inexpensively. I spend time with my daughter. Well, the time I'm not sitting in meeting rooms, there's a lot of this going on just now. But I get some time to do stuff, and I don't care. The last time when I was sitting there thinking, God, I wish I had £100 so I could buy a... It's kind of gone, and I had my hell of a happier, because it screws with our heads. It really does break us. Okay, another statistic that you might not be aware of. You know that Britain's got the lowest level of benefit payments for the disabled, and the highest rate of disabled poverty in Europe. Now let's take that second one again. Not Greece, not Italy, not Spain, not Poland. Britain has the highest level of poverty among the disabled in Europe. And I just find that absolutely abhorrent. I cannot understand how we got here. How did we get to a place where people who, through no fault of their own, who, by being the person that they were born as, is put into a category whereby society largely excludes them because they are considered broken, because we design our society for the successful, we design our society for the car-driving wealthy, we design our society in these ways, and we condemn people to be outside of this society that we build for them. We even, I've got to say, I had to go to the Greens with their, what we need to do is start charging, congestion charging, to keep the streets of Edinburgh freer. So let me get this straight. You want to charge poor people to keep them out of the streets of Edinburgh so that rich people can drive unencumbered through the streets of Edinburgh? Because that's really what you mean. I mean, this is for the economy. This is all about the economy. We'll clear the streets of poor people. I mean, thankfully the Greens have kind of moved away from that pricing mechanism. But even the good folk have get trapped into this idea that we have to design a society for certain kinds of people, and that that's the best kind of society. Well, I'm going to say, do we hell. We can design a society which is for people. And it's not that tricky. So, let me... I haven't mentioned Common Weal yet, have I? Let me...
You've got 5 minutes.
I know, I was just going to do this 5 minutes. Let me give you an idea about what all this chat means in reality. What does it actually look like if we fix this? Okay. The Common Weal project itself is partly a branding trick, and I make no apologies for that. I'm a PR guy. I'm sick of coming up with good ideas and it never happens. So one of the reasons we set up the Reid Foundation is my professional background is political strategist, political lobbyist. And if you want people to believe and to understand things, you must give them names, you must give them identity so people can understand what it is. So we just wanted to say, right, how do we create this vision that people can understand and can believe? So we set some fairly specific ground rules for this, which is with Common Weal stuff, certainly at first, we're only going to pick things which have been shown to work elsewhere. Now, this is just because we're coming from the left and we're challenging the consensus. If I say to you that we can do X or we can do Y, I mean, the standard response is no, we can't. The capital flight, the world sky will fall in. So at the weekend, this is a secret, and I don't put that on the web before Sunday. We're launching one of our important papers, which is a very calm and straightforward talk through of how to renationalise all of Scotland's electricity and energy systems. One boring, reliable, national energy supplier supplying you electricity at a reasonable cost under a tariff that you can understand and not bothering you with phone calls in between. Plus, We'll decentralise it heavily so communities can control their own wind farm. They can control it and they can decide what they do. They can cut their own electricity bills if they want, or they can invest income. But above all, we get all the income back. Or perhaps actually not above all. This week alone, we have seen the chiefie of Scottish Power. And I mean, personally, I don't see this lightly. There's certain points at which I think the word treason needs to be pulled into this. This week alone, the Chief of Scottish Power told us that if we don't do exactly what we are fucking told, he's going to cut the power. And this is what he said. If you don't allow us a pricing mechanism that suits us, we may not invest to build an energy network that will supply you electricity this year. And you've got people saying, oh, you see, that's an important economic cost. Let me just stop you there, folks, and let me just run you through this here. We have a regulatory framework which means it is absolutely impossible for an energy company to lose money. They are allowed, through the regulatory framework, to pass 100% of the costs of infrastructure onto you, the customer. They cannot lose. They are lying through their teeth. He is blackmailing us. It is not true. And the reason he's blackmailing us is because we handed our national infrastructure over to a profit-making company who uses it for that purpose alone. They are not interested in supplying electricity. I live 4 miles outside of Biggar, which is a decent-sized town. It's only 35 miles from here. I have no electricity. It's not worth them connecting us to the grid. We're off-grid. And to be quite honest, we put an off-grid system in when we built the house, which just blew up. We actually have no electricity just now. My poor mum, I'm walking around the house. Because it's not, because supplying electricity to Scots is not really their goal. Taking money off of Scots is their goal. So they don't build an infrastructure grid which supports renewable energy, disparate sources of energy coming in. They are not working for us. This is me first. This is me first stuff from them. You take that concept and you spread it right across. If we start to do this, if we start to develop our natural resources and our shared benefit, then that 4 billion of extra income from fixing the economy increases and increases. We generate more income, we pull in more money, we start to be able to utilise the wealth of our nation for us collectively. And it is our nation. Once we start to do that, once we start to do other things like democracy, I start taking it seriously for change. We are the, I mean, this is another one that's going to, I've known this for so long now that it doesn't surprise me now, but it did then. We are the most undemocratic nation in the developed world. Below national level, below Holyrood, we have every single indicator of democracy is worse than absolutely everybody else, even England. We have the biggest local authorities. We have the smallest number of people who contest a seat in local government. We have by far, but I mean, I'm talking about a factor of 10 or 100. In fact, I'll give you the number. I need to do this from memory again. In Finland, 1 in every 140 people stands in a local election. In Norway, it's 1 in 80. In France, it's 1 in 120. In Britain, it's 1. In Scotland, it's 1 in 2,800. I mean, we're not talking about marginal difference. We're talking about enormous differences. In all of those countries, between 4 and 6 people contest each seat. In Scotland, and don't make this up, at the last local government election, for every constituency seat available, 2 people stood. We could have democracy, we could just toss a coin. That's where we've got to here. We have by far, and I so mean by far, the largest geographical space of local authorities anywhere. We have one local authority in Scotland that's bigger than Belgium. Just one local authority. And I'm right in the centre of Belgium, I have to drive 45 miles to get to my local authority. And that's local. I used to commute to Edinburgh from Biggar and it was closer. That's not local, that's not democratic. Why is it like that? Well, because it suits them. If they don't have to mess about dealing with our consent, then local authority bureaucracies can just get together, the KPMG and a number of private service companies, Sercos and Atoses and all that stuff, and they can just run the whole world all by themselves. We must break this down. Democracy is the balance to abuse of power. We need a whole other layer of local government in this country, and we need it now to decentralise. Now, what I'm trying to say here is, if we can do these things, if we can start to change the policy approaches which says it's me first, and shift it to, trying this out, see what you think, all of us first. we're going to probably develop an ID for Common Weal. We've got a graphic design company I've seen tomorrow going. I think we're going to use the strapline Common Weal, all of us first. It's hard to explain this stuff to people simply, so we're going to use me first and all of us first and see how we go. Try that out a wee bit before we actually start printing the stickers. But so this idea of all of us first, if we can do that, if we can take that philosophical approach, shift our economy that way, get an economy which has people actively and participatively involved. It is normal in the Nordic countries, it is normal in Germany, absolutely normal, that employees are what's called employee directors. Among the employees, they appoint routinely people onto the boards of the companies they work for. I'm not talking big companies. Kircher, the people who make the pressure washers, they're a big German company. And they not only have members of the workforce as directors on their board of governance, they have, and I just love this, they have members of the community on their board of governors, because their companies are seen as long-term parts of the community. So the community has people who are on that company. That's why they're such good companies, because forget what Thatcher told you. The best way to make a company work really effectively is to root it and anchor it in its economy. Because once it stays there, and once we get away from Britain's equity sale, the Dragon's Den, build a company, grow it as fast as you can, sell it as expensive as you can, maybe start again or buy a yacht, whatever. Their idea of success is not a smart arse playing Dragon's Den for how much equity you sold your company for. Their idea of success is passing it on to the next generation in a good and healthy state. That is a virtuous approach to industry. And how do they do that? Because they don't get to equity sale. Because if you've got employees running a company, they don't sell it. It's their future. You've got community working represented on a board. They don't sell the company. It's part of their future. So we've got to build that economy. Once we do, we start to create the virtuous circles that I was talking about, of having strong public finances, of being able to relaxedly decentralise things, of being able to say that certain aspects of our national wealth belong to us all. And once we get to there, once we get to there, we come to the question that you've sort of asked. And this is where I'm not going to tell you, you're going to tell me. When people say, what's the problem with welfare? I say it's not a problem with welfare. I mean, I have a lot of respect for SEDO and the stuff about welfare reform and what's happened just now. It's just vile. It's just horrible. But my basic take is, we don't want to design a nation built on welfare. Welfare is what you do when your nation has failed its people. We want to build a nation that doesn't fail its people. Now, there is an element to this which I think is very important, that there are certain aspects of people who are in the welfare state who are there not because necessarily the economy has failed them, but because they are in a particular place, a particular period in their life. So for example, children. Children are part of a welfare state because we don't really want them up the lungs or in the coal mines. Pensioners are part of that welfare state because they've worked, they did their bit and they're getting older and they can't carry what they used to carry, and people deserve to have some dignity in their old age. And there are some who have forms of physical or mental disability, which means they cannot contribute as straightforwardly without help as other people can. Now, the view of what people, I want to hear you telling me what we need to be doing with this, because what we want to do with the welfare policy work that we're doing, and it's funny because we get a hard time from people on the left in this one. Why aren't you talking about welfare reform? Because it's not our goal to create a Scotland which has got a foundation of welfare in which this is all burnt. We want to move that. But we also do have to start recognising that yes, we need to talk about pensions, and yes, we need to talk about childcare, and yes, we need to talk about the elements of welfare which are important. Youth unemployment business are not disappearing overnight. And also this question of how do we support people in a way that doesn't treat them and doesn't put them in a box of you're broken into welfare, but you have a different relationship to society for various reasons than other people do. We're going to build a system which doesn't put you in a box of broken, but integrates you back into that national system of collectivity of all of us first. So we don't have a disability paper just now. I would argue strongly that a lot of the things that we are I mean, 1 minute. What we're doing is we're doing a lot of, I thought it was 3 o'clock. We've got a whole bunch of key policy papers, how to nationalise this, how to fix the tax, how to deal with the economy, what we're going to do with pensions, industrial relations and so on. But we're also going to do another sequence of papers, probably, which we're calling cross-cutting papers. Because, for example, one of the things people have said is, what does Common Weal look like for women? Well, it's not one thing. It's in all of the papers. Now, if I was going to say we have a Common Weal paper on disability, I hope that that's the same approach. I hope that we picked up a lot of the key things in the other papers. So, like I say, you have proper democracy and you have proper capacity to engage, and people can't actually say, well, I live in a town and I can't get access to, can we put a ramp into the library, or, you know, what sort of things, what sort of infrastructure is necessary for us. You actually get to some say in it, and it isn't a paternalistic management which tells you this is what you're going to get. So I hope that what we're going to do in our core papers will answer a lot of these questions. But I know it won't answer them all, and I am very open to finding out what work it is that we should be doing that or not. And I'll stop and ask questions.
Whoa!
You can stop there when I said that.
That boy can talk.
That's the short version. I've just noticed I'm on for an hour to more about something.
Well, that was a journey. Like economics, language, industrial capacity, and we had media, and we thought we were going to hear about the Common Weal. That was fantastic. I know I said assume no knowledge, but I misled you there. I see from the people in the room that there's a huge of knowledge, not just about disability, but many of the people that I see around here are activists and have been active for quite a long time. So I would imagine that what you're going to get is a lot of lively and I would hope constructive debate and questions. Now what feels right to me here is to first of all kind of have a general period where we can discuss what we've heard and kind of try and link that together with thoughts around the Common Weal. And then maybe after half hour or so of that, move towards thinking about how disability as a concept and how the society that a Common Weal might well apply to would feel and look and be like for people with a disability. Now, I'm aware that not everyone in this room has a disability, but this is a conversation that I'm hearing from Robin that encompasses everybody. So this isn't for disabled people to tell people what things are like. This is to engage in a conversation and to come together to a common understanding. So what perhaps we'll do first is just see if anyone wants to. Good, Sue, excellent, Sue's ready. I almost feared we were going to have a concert on that to see who's going to get to go in first.
Second.
Okay, it was really interesting what you said. A lot of the stuff I totally agreed with. I guess there was a couple of things which really sort of stand out for me. One was that you said, welfare, we don't want to talk about welfare, and I totally understand your approach, this issue of welfare being about really subsidising big business and not really being for the people it's supposed to be, undermining people. And I certainly think that we do need to start thinking about how you provide welfare, and I think of welfare much broadly to include things like education and health and roads and transport and all these things, which could fuel, the provision of fuel. This could all be part of it. It's about well-being and making sure that we all have what we need. So I think universal benefits, what you're talking about, I think, is, and the awful stuff, is means-tested benefits, a benefit system, a welfare system which actually undermines people's confidence, which enslaves them, which disempowers them. And I think, if we're talking about how we sort of build a strong, a common weal, then what we need actually is benefits which, or a system, a welfare system, which empowers people, which makes people feel confident, which makes them feel better about themselves, which helps them to find their own identity and their own, and develop as human beings. And the other thing, okay, so that's one thing, but the other thing that I really feel it's important to say, you said, you know, us on the left, us on the left, us on the left. I would imagine probably most of the people in this room consider themselves to be on the left, certainly ever since I shocked my parents at age 16 by saying, you know, I'm a communist. Surely communism is the best option. I've always considered myself to be on the left. But one of the things that really disturbs me about the left has been the disempowerment of certain groups. I'm thinking about gender issues, disability issues. These are issues that haven't really been addressed. There's been quite a macho culture, quite a competitive, you know, certain people aren't any use to us, so we don't want to be bothered listening to their concerns in this great scheme, this great project, which is going to lead us to the promised land. So those are the two things that I...
Let me answer both, because I think those are both very good questions, and let me do them in the order that you asked them, because I forget the first time. No, you're absolutely right. One of the things which is slightly, just a wee bit unfortunate, is the Common Weal stuff developed rapidly at the start of this year. It wasn't planned. None of the best stuff is. We've already done a major report at the end of last year after the ridiculous Joanne Lamond speech about something for nothing. We put out a major report on universalism, the power of universalism. It was republished in the UK, it's by UK-wide organisations. It's the strongest document. The argument is unarguable. Just in a straightforward economic efficiency. There's two kinds of pensions. There's a means tested and there's a non-means tested pension. The level of error and fraud alone, the volume of the cost of error and fraud alone in the means tested pension is 50 times higher than the universal, just for efficiency alone. Now, there's all sorts of approaches which can be taken. I've got to say, and I don't talk about it when I'm opening out on this, because I remember I was saying about sticking to stuff that works. It's the left, got to keep the credibility. I'm a big fan of moving towards a basic income. If anyone doesn't know basic income, what it says is we have a higher level of tax, it's sometimes called a citizen's income. We have a higher level of tax for everybody in society, and everybody gets a living wage automatically. Whether you're in work or whether you're not work, everybody has a baseline level of living wage, and then work becomes something more like a top-up for you. Now, the citizen's income is a bit of a holy grail for a lot on the left, because what it does, it says, by dint of being a citizen of this society, you are due the dignity of being able to eat and live and clothe yourself and live in a house. Now, to make it universal and to have everybody getting it straight away takes away so much of the stigma that you're talking about. Nobody's actually pulled off a full-blown living wage, basic income, so I don't overplay it. That's where I'd like to go, and I keep saying something that I didn't mention here. I'm a genuine lefty, but I'm a genuine believer in the importance of bringing people together. I should have said that I despise populism. Despise it. The art of setting people against other people is inherently vile. It disgusts me, it really does. And we use little elements of populism, but I was in a debate about this with somebody, and they were saying, how do you feel about that? And I says, look, the only populism I have ever used is against institutions. I'm happy to talk about people against corporations, but you wouldn't even get me talking about people versus management. These are people too. We can't run a society where people are turned against each other. One of the aims that we're trying to do with Common Weal is, and I phrase it like this, draw a circle small enough to mean something real, but big enough to get as many people as we can in it, to bring people together. And we've got a lot of business support for this, because to be quite honest, Scottish businesses have been screwed over just about as much as ordinary Scottish people in favour of the corporations. So finding a way to bring this all together is important. The language point is really, I didn't go on about language much, but the language point is really important. It's quite hard to find the phraseologies, because they were great phraseologies and they all get mangled. Social security is a brilliant phrase, because that's what we're really talking about. You talked about going on to be happy. The idea of security is the most important element we're missing in society. Very few people feel secure. Very few people feel, I am now safe. I'm safe and I can enjoy myself, or be miserable, whatever the hell it is that rings your bell, but get on with my life. The problem that we've got is whenever somebody gets to a state of economic security, it's like they carry a big flag above them, exploit this guy. So this idea of security has been taken. Same as national insurance is a brilliant phrase. We will insure our nation against the worst things that will come to it. And I'm a linguist, not a language linguist. I'm a literature. I did the theories of how language works was one of the key areas of interest I was in, and the way in which they polluted all of our beautiful ideas has made me so angry. Welfare. Now I use this all the time, and I didn't explain it here. The welfare state includes everything which involves taking from us all collectively according to our ability to pay and delivering for us all universally according to our need. That is the welfare state. Roads are the welfare state. Army is the welfare state. Police is the welfare state. Schools is the welfare state. We need to run all of it for the welfare of society. And we mustn't let them split this down. Cash benefits are not welfare. Cash benefits are the only bit of the welfare state that the political right has been able to manufacture as a hate. Everything else they can't touch. They can't even touch pensions. So yes, we've got to do this. We've got to think about ways to integrate all this back in together and to make it all about universalism. When we make it, not it, you and me, not him, we lose things. And on the left, driving me up the wall. It's not been a glorious 30 years for the left. I'm going to give you just my example of why I'm frustrated with them, which is I keep asking people, what do you want from an independent Scotland? I keep talking to people on the left and they say, repeal the anti-trade union laws. Now I'm all for big stories, but I just say to them, which ones? And they say, not just all of them, but like which act, which bit? So, well, I don't know, but just all of them. Okay, well, what would it be like if we repealed them? Would we be able to pick it again? So let me get this straight. Your whole vision for the future is flying pickets. Have you thought this through, or are you just posing? And this is one of the things that I think has been a problem. We're getting a habit of marching, we're getting a habit of protesting, we're having it blowing our mouth off. We haven't gotten enough of the habit of working. We need to work to build a vision. And just the last point, I'm just going to say this because it's going to come up anyway, and I'll just get out of the way now. It's Leslie Riddick thing. It's a writer that she knows. There are two kinds of society that they identify. They call them masculine societies and feminine societies. A masculine society measures itself according to the success at the top. In a masculine society, everybody could be a beast, but if you've got one Olympic sprinter, you've done well. A feminine society measures itself according to the middle. We need to become way more feminine. And if I had to tell one more person on the left, stop shouting at people, start talking to them. We're going to set up a leadership programme in the Reid Foundation. I want to generate I want to create a new generation of the left who can talk to people and with them.
Can I, before I ask John to say what he wants to say, Robin, I'm not entirely certain how I'm going to say this to you, but...
You want me to be shorter?
Could you do shorter?
I'll try.
Do you do shorter?
I'll try.
Is that something you do?
You can.
Is that in the Common Weal?
I can. I'll imagine it. I'll imagine one to tell it.
Do you do shorter, John? No, do you?
No, I'm short enough.
Just a couple of things, just resonate with me, the universal unconditional benefit, that's so important. The thing that's stuck in my head since 1981, the use of language that you're going on about, and language in action, discourse, Scrounges on the Dough, Ian Sproat, 1981, Aberdeen MP, how much that's suffused the consciousness, and how do we use language to counteract that? And I think there is a legacy. It's like that Spirit of 45, without getting too gooey about it. Some of the contributors to that, especially GDH Co and the Guild Socialists, Libertarian Socialists, who were promoting this idea of a citizen's income. I think we need to explore that much more fully, because this was the thing about conditionality. How do we... it's unconditional that we are citizens of a free Scotland. That's the idea we're trying to promote. And if you're a citizen here, we can eradicate poverty. We can eradicate poverty with an unconditional income. I mean, to contradict some of your criticisms of the Green Party, but it is part of their kind of manifesto and all. So there's alliances around there. But how do we use the language? We can't have people lying in their beds while I'm working, getting a basic income. How could give people the basic income, make them feel involved, make them feel part of it? I think that's an idea you want to develop in your Reid Foundation.
The battle of meaning is one of the most important battles that we fight. The media and the narratives of Britain is a battle for the meaning of words, for the meaning of life. That is a fight we must never lose vision of. to be quite honest, it's about 95% of. I watched Spirit 45 recently, and I was sitting there thinking, total fraud. Common Weal's just 1945 with higher decentralisation, and I don't care if it needs a new name for something we've already got to make it work. That's fine. And remember, discourse is incredibly important. People don't understand just how important discourse is. And I'll give you one example. Excuse for the word, but it is a feminist analysis. There is no such thing as a slut. A slut has no definitional meaning. It does not exist. It's not something that's natural in society. It's not an apple. It's not a dog. The word slut does not describe something. The word slut creates something. It's the word that makes the thing real. The same with scrounger and the same with a whole bunch of things. We have got to challenge these words every time we hear them. But more than that, we've got to create a better dialogue and narrative. And it's not tricky, because the simple truth is, most people aren't actually all that comfortable with a language that makes them the victim. We need a positive, reassuring language. And one of the simple things that I keep saying to everyone is, I know a lot of us don't feel comfortable with it, but keep reminding people we are a wealthy nation. Because that confidence of believing that we are a wealthy nation, we can do better, is part of the narrative. The other side want to keep reminding us how poor we are, not as a nation, only as individuals.
Right then. Okay, thanks very much for everything you've said. And the first two people that questioned you have gone straight to specifics, which are all very valid and very current topics. But what I'd like to speak about in my little short period here is I have never heard an explanation of the social dialectic in play delivered to a group like this, with all the baggage of conspiracy theories that used to come with it. Nicely got rid of, well done. And I would welcome a common weal where we could bring those truths into the general consciousness of the population, so people understand the predicament that they're in, instead of living in a suspension of disbelief that everything's going to be better and they'd never do this to us, and of course the government's my friend, and all this sort of thing. So thank you very much.
What I really want to get across with this is, and this is the really difficult bit, because I'm caught in the middle of, I'm a strategist, but I'm also a bit pointy-headed, as you'll have gathered. I quite care about the content. I have a board of academics who have to go through our papers, and it means it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have, because when we put papers out, they are bulletproof, and they need to be, because I don't own newspapers. One of the things which I am a little frustrated with not having time to do, because I'm working 6.5 days a week just now, I want to start writing the popular narrative. That's my bit. That's the thing that I care about. I'm going to give you one super simple example. We need to start popping questions into society, into the political debate. I'm 40. In the 40 years that I've been alive, there has never once been any government strategy, initiative, or even discussion about the question of the quality of jobs. Jobs are only quantitative. 1,000 jobs is a success. That's madness. As I said to everyone, there's only one category of person in the whole world who cares about 1,000 jobs. That's a politician. Every single other person in humanity cares about one job. One decent job. And one decent job has never been part of the political narrative, because if neoliberalism was opened up to the question of job quality, and people say, well, why am I living like this? If that was allowed to be into the narrative, we would be in trouble. We've got to start asking simple questions. Why can't my job be better? I want to get to the point, and this is, I don't know if it'll work, but I want to get to the point we can create a series of fundamental questions about the nature of our society, and we can get them saturated. I want the kids to put stickers on the walls. I want it to read everywhere. Why is a Scottish business paying a higher rate of tax than the corporations it competes against? Why? Because the corporations run it, pay the tax. Why is it that we can't have a better job? Why is it that if I turn 65, I'm treated like a failure simply by being retired? Why is it like this? If we can change a complete other narrative. I get no patience for shouting, no patience for conspiracy theories. I love them. Quite a lot. I was sceptical about the moon landings until someone really did explain it to me. But it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It's the same thing. Stop being anti. Stop being paranoid. Just start. We carry people, not by scaring them. Scaring them makes people stay still. Moving people means making them believe. Making them believe it can be better and inspiring them. That's all we've got to do. We just have to create a whole bloody Obama with his yes we can, and then what happened next. But that idea, Yes, we can. It's possible to do these things. That's got to be the narrative. It's got to stop whining about everything.
So, did you want to ask a question, John?
Yes, please.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take two at once. I'm making it more difficult for you now. Yes.
I haven't got a pen. Who can lend me a bit of paper and a pen so I write these down? Nobody brought two paper. I've got a pen.
You've got paper.
I've got
Brilliant.
Got this is a common wheel, and that's
Aye,
here
here we
to
go, you see that?
these.
All of this first, cheers. Right, take it out in groups of questions. Answer.
So can John and then Lily, you had a question?
Aye.
You did have a question, huh?
Yeah.
I knew you did. I can see you thinking. And then Liz?
No, I didn't.
You did not. Okay. So, John and Lily.
Thanks, George. I'm John McConnell with the Black Triangle Campaign. Just recently, we've seen at all three party conferences the lobby group Reform, which is costs £8,000 a year for each company to belong to. It's registered as a charity now, and it's had a fringe event at all three party conferences, at the Lib Dem, at the Labour Party conference hosted by Anne Maguire, and at the Tory Party conference hosted by Lord Ford. And the title of the meeting was called New Thinking on the Welfare State, sponsored by the British Association of Insurers, of whom Unum is a prominent member. Unum, I don't know if you know the history, have been described as a rogue company in the United States by the Insurance Commissioner of California, and have been lobbying the British government for many years now to change the welfare to what we regard as the sort of backdoor privatisation of the welfare state. And indeed, John Pring of Disability News Service just published an article on Friday talking about how insurance companies are looking to top up the income of disabled people. So again, we see, rather than what we're asking for, which is a citizen's income, that gives dignity to every citizen. So my point is that what's like predicating this is the idea that the neoliberal, the false narrative of cuts and austerity, which is that there is no money left. We've bailed out the banks, and we need to keep doing that to keep our financial system. Otherwise the whole world's going to come collapsing around us. And I do think that we need to look at the monetary system in ways that campaigns such as Positive Money are doing to look at this. But how can we in Scotland change this narrative and really, because we're swimming in a sea of propaganda, and it's very difficult to break. And also, all three same conferences as well, they had the policy exchange, which shockingly was entitled Skiving versus Working. So can I just share my thoughts with you on that as well?
Yeah. When I was listening to left reformism, and that left reformism is something that I've fought against for a long time. But then I kind of look at my practice, and it probably is to try and be the best left reformist around. That is to take the arguments that are current, take the arguments that are around either in work or in communities, and try to challenge the prevailing ideas and what is perceived, and to work with people to take their consciousness, their view of the world, as it's explained by capitalism, right? The dominance of ideas by the other side. And to see if their experience challenges that, i.e. they go. And sometimes that's shouting, that's shouting at councils, that's going into meetings and raising their voices and whatever. So when you pose it in that way, it looks nice and neat that we look to the academic, the papers, the Jimmy Reids, and I spent some time with Jimmy Reid fighting for a long life education, Murray House, and I was part of a platform and stuff like that. So he did have a lot of shouting, you know, as well. So, you know, don't baby out with the bathwater here. This is a combination of the 50,000 that marched against the Tories, with you issuing leaflets and papers that we can use. So we are looking for ideas. I think there's a general struggle for how do we fight neoliberalism now, as the models that were involved in the Revolutionary Party, that I'm involved in, democratic centralism, Leninism and whatever. Is this a useful tool to go forward with? Or is there somewhere in which that combination that we all spit together, as McAkey would say, right? It's the question of the organisation of that spitting. I didn't mean the physical spitting, because it's quite horrible to look at. You know, Ian Duncan Smith would gob all over it. But nevertheless, you know, so the question really is there on the left an attempt at a consensus? And I think that we in Scotland have at least got something around the independence, because it opens up the space for the argument of what kind of Scotland we want. And I think that's why we look at the Common Weal, that's why we look at radical independence or the Yes campaign or whatever. What kind of Scotland? That then challenges everybody. It challenges people in England and Wales and whatever to look and see what they're about in a separate UK. So I think I kind of welcome it. I recognise where it's coming from, and I'm not hostile to it, but I'm hostile in another way, which is it does not challenge fundamentally the capitalist society and create a socialist society. It is like we're all good and nice, you know, and that's not bad, you know. As at least a short-term, mid-term goal to be much more nicer to everybody, and everybody will benefit.
I'll let you come back.
Well, I was just going to say when basically personally myself since 2007 I've become increasingly feeling more politically isolated and more angry. You know what I mean? Because of and it's based on the fact that, you know, that it's them and us, but them and us come from somewhere. You know what I mean? We aren't ruled by aliens. We're ruled by people, some of them who used to be us, who moved forward as individuals to be angry. So, and in that case, my tolerance has disappeared. I want them to pay, and I want them to pay, and I want to be sore. And I want to be physically sore. Yeah, no, I'm clear about this. I'm very clear about this. Because these people know collectively what they do. You know what I mean? And then, so there's a bit about the shouting, it's fair enough, and there's a bit about the talking, right? And even though one of my most political eye-openers was about being tolerant, I'm still fighting against that. I just want to say a story about this elderly woman who said something very quietly, yet changed a lot with it. Right? In North Edinburgh, this very elderly woman who is a community activist spent her life fighting for childcare and for. And I remember one day we had been at the council 2-3 weeks outside, 500, 600, 700 giving it a shout, and we were shouting at people who used to be us. You know what I mean? We were shouting the Labour Party were in control, they were reneged on everything they said they were going to do, and goes out of the chamber. This woman stands up and she says, I don't want to speak to the Tories, very calmly, don't want to speak to the Liberals. I actually just want to speak to the female members of the Labour Party here. I want you to think about how you have changed. How in the 60s, because they were all of the age where they would have been active in the 60s, how in the 60s you claim to be radical. The fact that you're here as politicians and you're independent women is because of that radicalism. I want you to think about back in the 60s when you say every woman has a right to her own body and every woman has a right to childcare and every family has a right to kindness. I want you to, when you make the decision now whether you're going to cut this childcare budget, because if you do, you've never been any of these things you've claimed you've been. And you can't continue to claim that you were once radical. If you are about, because to cut this budget is to cut the childcare or the poorest women in this city. And they sat down. And none of them voted for it. And it never went through. And I put no to the 500 people shouting outside, to this 80-year-old woman who very calmly said that and sat down. So, but even against that, my tolerance has disappeared.
I don't want anybody to think that just because I made that point, I'm not shouting. I'm shouting very loudly. No. But I want to be
my tolerance has disappeared, and I don't want to tolerate them anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put them up against and shoot them.
No.
And I'm not talking about that. But I don't know what I want to do to them, but I don't have any tolerance for them.
Can I pick up the last 2 points in particular? Because this has been a hell of a long personal debate for me. Now, I know it's not as long as some of you, because I'm only 40, so I'm not a yet. But the way I described it to somebody was, when I was in my 20s, I was 20 years old, sat at university, debated Marxism, and designed the perfect society in my head. I was convinced that was just around the corner. And then I got to 30 and stayed up the Scottish Life Review, and I believed that if we could create really good debate and discussion, the best ideas would come out. And we did, and it didn't change the world. And now I'm 40, I am as patient as hell, and I am not waiting any longer to sit around in 10 years' time saying, God damn it, I wish we'd done something. I am not averse to shouting. I am a very big fan of the simple fact that there is no one answer to social change. I was at a conference, it was a food conference, and there's a guy asking me, he says, listen, I was listening, he says, I suddenly feel guilty. I'm helping food banks in Glasgow, and I feel like I'm almost legitimising the economy, I'm almost legitimising the Tories by managing this. And I had a very simple answer, I didn't find this difficult at all. I says, look, would it make my life easier? Because I'm working at high level policy and big campaigns, would it make my life easier if people were starving in the streets of Glasgow? Definitely. Do I want people to starve in the streets of Glasgow? No. Yes, what you do disguises the horror of what's been done to us, and yes, it's in conflict with other things. But, and I put this in a very simple way, and this gets people surprised, and I don't know why. The myth of strategy, the belief that we can act now and secure the future. You can do certain things now that make it more likely, but there's only one way anything ever could change. This is this. You wake up in the morning, you do the best you can, you go to bed, you start again. And that's one of the things which I think has just been missing from this entire political debate, is we're not going to press a button and fix anything. The second we make something better, someone will try to make it unbetter, or someone else will be trying to make it better in a different way and it's not going to work, or whatever. It's a non-stop process. We keep going with all of this stuff. And, I mean, there's different elements to this. I've got to say I've struggled. I really have struggled for years, because I'm bloody angry as well. I mean, my mum, Vice Chair of Scottish, said to be very Quakerish in her means a genuine pacifist. Now, I'm not by nature. I'm a bit fierier. I like a good fight. But for years I always tried to work out what was the answers. Is it Nuremberg or is it peace and reconciliation? And the simple truth is that while one might argue that truth and reconciliation didn't exactly work in South Africa, I've never known anything that began in blood to end well. At some point you've got to stop the cycle of hate. And I try to remind myself that much as I'd like to strangle, because this is on the camera, this is the police, the end of the police, this is not for real. Much as I'd like to strangle Margaret Curran, and some of the ridiculous things she says, which as far as I'm concerned, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, this is to the right of Michael Forsyth. And what the hell has become of you? What the hell is this? And what's your purpose and why do you exist? what have you brought to the sum total of humanity with this shit that's pouring in my ear just now? Punishing her is not going to make anything better. It might make me feel briefly better. It's not going to make anything better. And I tell you what it's going to do. It's going to make me worse. If I allow my time to be taken up by punishing her for things that she did, rather than trying to fix her, because she is broken, rather than trying to bring her back to where she should have been, then I don't think we're going to achieve it. Now, I'm to the left of Common Weal. I invented it. But that's fine, because I want something now. I was at a meeting and there was a guy that stood up and said the workers need to rise up and take control of the means of the economy, and then only then will we move forward. Brilliant. I said, brilliant, give us a time scale. Get me my diary out. I am no longer. I tell you one of the things that the slightly, I call them fetishist upper middle class left, who really do just like smashing things. His last big views, some of them really just like, they get attracted to that. And my patience with them is really limited, because people are starving right now. And I don't care anymore. I'll do whatever the hell it has to do. I'll do whatever has to be done to make it happen now, to fix it now. And that's why the second we get everybody in that circle that I was talking about, my job, personally, my life will be dedicated to drawing a slightly smaller circle inside that circle. Get as many people into that as I can. And I'll get to the point where I can't go any further, and I have to accept that I am perhaps to the left of the centre. But that brings me back to the question of left reformism and this question of where we are. The key point is to remember that virtually everybody is to the left of what nominally is the centre in Scotland. And this is the thing that's crazy. Even, and this is hard for me, even the Tories have started talking about the disbenefits of a low-pay society. And I agree, I don't believe that there's a single tool which fixes everything. And speak gently, they will come isn't the only way that things work. One of the most telling things was years ago when I was young, and somebody told me this and it stuck in my head, and they said everything requires three people, and I think they're going to be called long marchers, stone throwers and alternative builders. You need people who are willing to get into the inside and plough their way through the best they can, with the institutions pulling them as the institutions pull them, and changing what they can from the inside. You need people from the outside throwing stones at it, say this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough, to give them momentum to make sure that everybody does something. I need the alternative builders who'll go away and they'll say, look, you folk go on, I'm going to try and make something better here. You can't, you need all these things. These things don't happen. Nothing changes. You need all of these things. Right now, my belief in that, again, the academics drive me up the wall too, I mean, really do, but in a good way. Right now, my view, my judgment, my political view is that if we want universal childcare, the way we're going to get it is show the economics of it. And I'm going to tell you a statistic I didn't use earlier about I think this is amazing. The female participation in the Nordic economy beyond ours is worth more than the royal income. Say that again. The female participation in the labour market in Norway, this was from the Financial Times, that level of participation that they have because of the universal childcare and they can work, that is of worth more value to their economy than the royal income. Now, we can show that, and I just think right now, where we are, that is what we can show, that we can bring this round. But I am actually genuinely a people person. I love people, even the sinners. And I try to remind myself when I get angry, and I do get angry, if I get fizzing angry, thankfully I managed to keep it to myself when I come out into the outside world. I get fizzing angry. I try to remind myself that we're all flawed. I'm not perfect. And you get to circumstances where compromises are part of your life. All of us do. And the system and the institutions make us compromise. And to paraphrase the Americans, hate the institution, not the person that's corrupted by it. And try and bring them back. Try and bring people with us. Because this is above all, nothing ever happened if you don't bring people with you. You run off on your own, you'll be on your own. We must bring people with us. My great political heroes are Mandela and Gandhi, and they are. And I know all the flaws, and I know all the problems, and yet there is something about saying we're going to stand up and bring people with us that is a highly admirable thing. And once we brought people with us, and everybody's sitting around consensually talking about the better society,
I'm going to say, what's wrong with you people? Fucking start shouting. So yes, it's different times and different moments. This is a moment. Britain is broken. And I don't mean that the Tory way. I mean it in the social way. We are a broken and divided society with fragmented communities and collapsing social cohesion. And that's an ugly thing. First thing we have to do, and I don't have any hopes for Britain just now, that's why I'm a strong independent supporter. The first thing we have to do is heal. We need to bring people back together again. And if that means I can have trade unionists and business community talking mutually and supportively, I think that's the best thing that we can do. And I think that's how we have to go forward. And like I say, at some point I'm going to say, wow, this has got too cosy. Let's smash something. Now's not the time for smashing stuff, is my view. Be of good heart on Reform Scotland. Reform Scotland's got the kind of money that I dream of. These people have got, I mean, Reform Scotland charges more per company than we've spent in 2 years. And at UK level, they are nasty. They are not great. They're not nice. They're not nice people. They're not carrying nice policies. Thank goodness they're utterly, pointlessly, uselessly impotent. Reform Scotland has been putting policy work out for 5, 6, 7 years, and the most influential bit of it is propping on a table somewhere. Nobody's listening. Be of good heart, people. We are winning in Scotland. This shit doesn't touch Scottish politics. Joanne Lamont took a brief shot at doing a playwright, oh well, we'll ration public services. She survived about 3 days before she was made to recant. This is, and I mean this is our Scotland. Those of us who believe in a socially progressive country, you cannot get a sniff of the chance of making any sort of policy decision in this country on a Reform Scotland agenda. So be of good heart. They are useless here. We've spent, I don't think we've been, this has 2 years